Welcome to True Out Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. Immune system. Okay, now this is really important when we're talking about this because there is a panic virus going on, and I just saw this quote and had to bring it back up. Stupidity is the same as evil if you judge by the results. If you remember, and this was just a few months ago for those of you that happen to be in Huntington Beach, to control this unusual virus, you couldn't walk on the grass. And you couldn't park next to the grass. You had to park a block away. Now, 100 years from, forget 100 years, 5 years from now, people will look back at this and go, wow, was the government completely stupid? Was the medical authorities completely stupid? And why did people go along with it? So let's go back, because a lot of people are talking about the 1918 pandemic. And honestly, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And this is what a lot of the fear mongers are talking about. Oh, wiped out, 50 million or 500 million, because the numbers are skewed because they don't really know. This was a study in 1918, November to December. They took 100 Navy guys. Now, I know what you're thinking. These guys ate nothing but organic and whole food. You're probably right, 1918. Okay, but 100 relatively healthy guys. So they go in, and I just want to read this part. They wanted to see if they could infect them. So the first volunteers received one strain and then several strains of Pfeiffer's bacillus by spray, swab in their throats, nose, and then in their eyes. This failed to produce the disease. Others were inoculated with mixture of other organisms isolated from the throats, noses, and influenza patients. So they're literally putting sputum in these, pathogen isolates everywhere. Next, some volunteers received blood injections from the influenza patient. Finally, 13 of the volunteers went up to 10 patients each. They had to talk to them close, shake their hands, and the patients who were sick had a cough in their face. None of the volunteers in the experience developed influenza. And now you might be thinking, well, wait a second, these people were sick. That's because it's very, very hard to infect a healthy individual. The theory, and this is that viruses grow in sick tissue. So it's different than what the media is portraying. But I like the doctor who was in charge of this. Rosano was clearly puzzled, and he cautioned against drawing conclusion from the negative results. He wrote in the JAMA article, telling it with acknowledgement. We entered the outbreak with the notion that we knew the cause of the disease. We were quite sure we knew how it was transmitted from person to person. Perhaps if we've learned everything, it is that we are not quite sure what we know about the disease. Now, this is called humility. It's called making a decision and doing an experiment and finding out that you were wrong. You're not going to see that in today's political, social climate. And in fact, any dissenting opinions are censored. Okay, and we have gotten used to this. This is why, if you're seeing this, make sure you download it, because they are censoring information like this. And in fact, there's a lot of information I can't talk about. Like if I talk about vitamin being good for diseases, that I could get censored. Because even though vitamin therapy has been done before with great success, okay, you can't mention it because it's not really patentable. But let's look back at this again. Now, salicylates, and this is going to be an aspirin. See, back in 1918, they didn't know that it could develop a toxic amount. It's kind of like today when you have 72 doses of 17 different vaccines going inside of a human being, and we see a massive rise in autoimmune conditions. We're not really looking into that. So they kind of did the same thing. Now, the high case fatality rate, especially in young adults under the 1918 to 1919 influenza pandemic, is incompletely understood. Although the late deaths showed bacterial pneumonia, early deaths showed an extremely wet, sometimes hemorrhagic lungs. The hypothesis herein is that aspirin contributed to the incidence and severity of the viral pathology, bacterial infection, and death. So interesting. The therapies that they used weaken the immune system. And I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking about the ventilators. Okay, the ventilators where they have people that are talking and they give them enough sedatives to knock them out, and they put a forced air thing in there that caused lung damage, and then they found out that that was the wrong approach. Yes, that did take months. Thank you for bringing that up. There's one in every crowd. Okay, now, when you look at this, in 1918, okay, the Surgeon General in the Journal of the American Medical Association recommended the use of aspirin just before the October death spikes. If these recommendations were followed and pulmonary edema occurred in 3% of the population of the persons, a significant portion of the deaths may be attributed to aspirin. Now you might think, wait, we just saw that article from the CDC that said only 6% of the people that are listed as deaths died from this disease, as opposed to dying with it. There's a difference there. So let's look at this. So if the immune system is the only thing that protects you, and we had immune systems that are pretty darn similar back in 1918, although the diet was significantly different. And I encourage you to read, really encourage you to read this article, because they had a bunch of vaccines that were rushing to production. There was a big fear. Some of the vaccines, one in there, had a 1 week production trial and to the market. 1 week. Yeah, take that for warp speed. Okay, so when we look at this, our diseases actually exist. Like, what does heart disease look like outside of the body? How much does type 2 diabetes weigh? And I know these are inane questions because it doesn't make sense. But if we look at this, what is the cause, the official cause of these diseases? It's all unknown or idiopathic. So I'm going to present a couple of documents here that what if these are not diseases, that they're actually adaptations to physical, chemical, or emotional stress. Now, what do we know about the immune system? Let's look at Dr. Gary Fathom, professor of immunology and rheumatology and associate director for the Institute of Immunology. He should know, right? If a patient were to ask me how my immune system is doing today, I would have no idea how to answer that, and I'm an immunologist. None of us can answer that. Right now, we're still doing the same test I did when I was a medical student in the 60s. We can perturb the immune system with all kinds of different ways and measure 100,000 different things in response to that. Anything that might affect the system, a vaccine, a disease, a drug can tell you something. Anything. And it's interesting. Here's Mark Davis going along with that. It's an awful lot of moving parts. We don't know what the vast majority of them do or should be doing. We can't even be sure how to tell when the immune system is not working, let alone why not, because we don't have good metrics on a healthy immune system, what it looks like. Now these are the experts. Now, when you politicize a disease, now let's say that you had an epidemic that was so deadly that the hospitals were empty, they were laying off people, that, the people that were getting sick, let's say like 99.6% of them had more than one comorbid condition. In fact, the average person has 2.6 comorbid conditions, and they're well over 70. Okay, so the vast majority of our population is not at risk. But let's say you politicize it, and so in order to see how sick these people are, you got to do a test. Now, I know you're thinking that PCR test is only 80% false positive, and it doesn't test the viral load. It just tests that you have something similar to this virus. So we have this one, threader.app, and this guy went through and looked at 37 colleges in America. And how many people are there? There's 48,000 people. Now, if you're not aware of this, when you're going to college now, there's no sport events, there's no theater, there's no lunches, there's no food in the cafeteria. And if you're caught talking to someone, okay, with less social distance, you can get turned in and eventually you can be expelled. Now there are 48,000 people. There were 2 people in a hospital. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the health of those 2 people? Because if we got this many people in this environment, is it safe? Now, on a side note, we had one of our patient's brothers pissed off with the school system here. And because the students now are going to have to wear a mask. They can't hug, can't touch, can't play, can't have recess, can't eat in the cafeteria. So there's no social interaction. Now, how long do you think it will take for our population of children to develop a psychosis? Months? Years? Okay, because we're teaching them to be afraid of each other. So he decided that this wasn't appropriate for him, so he goes to Finland, where they have open schools and no masks, and they have fun and playtime and everything else. So there's other countries around the world that are breaking from this political pact. Now, the top part was going to do a little research on the two people that were in the hospital, but I like this one from the realclearpolitics.com. Now, this was a statement made back in April. I think it was April. And it was yes, I know, I'm so excited to quote this guy, the great God Fauci. No, not Poseidon. Poseidon's the one with the trident, okay? This guy has a CDC next to him. And so what he said, in all the history of respiratory viruses, asymptomatic transmission has never been the driver of outbreaks. An epidemic is not driven by asymptomatic carriers. Yes, that is my Charlton Heston voice. Okay, now this everybody had to backtrack on, even though it's true. Epidemics are not driven by people without symptoms. That is crazy. People without symptoms that have exposure that don't have symptoms, they're called healthy. Thank goodness. It escaped me somewhere. Okay. So then we know that the CDC went back, and there's some real good doctors there, but most are political. But they went and found out that all the numbers, so when you see 200,000, 300,000, I think there's like over 1 million people in all of the world that is supposedly have died from this, that 94% of them didn't die from it. They died with it. So they already had an average of 2.6 comorbid conditions. Now, we know that the influenza vaccine actually predispose you to get more illnesses than according to this study of the National Institute of Health in the Journal of Vaccine. The virus receiving the influenza vaccine may increase the risk of other respiratory viruses, a phenomenon has virus interference. The virus interference phenomenon goes against the basic assumption of the test negative vaccine effectiveness study that vaccination does not change the risk of infection with other respiratory illnesses. Thus, potentially biasing the vaccine effectiveness results in a positive direction. Furthermore, individual respiratory viruses and their association with the influenza vaccine were examined. Now, you might think, because we know that vaccines can have a nonspecific effect. I mean, if you give somebody an aspirin to reduce a fever or a headache and it causes kidney damage or stroke, we know that those are some of the effects of it. Okay, so you got to kind of look at, it's not just a one size fits all, unless you're watching American TV. Okay, there's one opinion there, baby. Okay, so when you look at this study, they're going non-influenza viruses went up through the roof, coronaviruses went up through the roof. Yeah, that's right, coronaviruses, which is not unusual because that's around 30% of all the regular circulating viruses out there. And then no pathogen detected. So, and now this is interesting because we are going to have an experimental vaccine, possibly forced on most of us, unless you're living in Utah. And hopefully other states can come up with this. But it turns out the government in America, okay, America is like the central government, we got the big government, and then they have a whole bunch of little countries called states. Utah went in and said the public notice, termination of state of emergency and emergency powers. Wait, I'm reading it backwards through this, and that was not easy. Emergency powers by the people of Utah. We, the people of Utah, exercise our inalienable rights affirmed by the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, to issue a vote of no confidence in the emergency actions and edicts regarding the alleged pandemic by the governor, lieutenant governor, and branches of the state government. I like this sign. This sign by, it was on this website for Utah. Hopefully other states will grow some testicles or ovaries. Western Ace Hardware, will not require our employees or patrons to wear masks. Please refer to the Constitution of the United States. God, it gives me hope because, that's so American. Okay, so let's look at viruses. So we just looked at a study of very, very sick people, and they're trying to put sputum in their eyes, down their throat, down their nose, and they can't cause it. So what is it? If viruses are really attacking healthy people, we haven't seen that because that's not what the statistics are showing. So let's look at what viruses are. 45% of your DNA is viral in origin. That means that it comes from outside of you. That means that viruses has a purpose. It has a purpose. When we look at this, viruses are an integral part of your ecosystem, including the human body. Most viruses are not harmful. In fact, they play an important part of evolution and maintaining healthy ecosystems. You realize that on my hand, I have viruses, funguses, bacteria. It's called normal flora. Love you. But also, the skin is part of your immune system. Okay, it has a low pH. It has a whole ecosystem. I've got staph epididymis on here, okay, that literally protects you. There's so many things that you got on there, and that's called normal flora. Now, yes, if you do want to wipe out the normal flora, you can use those Purells. Yes. Okay. Now, they are able to move genetic information between hosts, but we still do not fully understand how this has influenced and continues to influence the evolution of the new species. So it's almost like you're designed to live here. Now, we have the modern philosophy and germ theory. Now, and believe it or not, I had a doctor argue this, and I said, the body is self-healing and self-regulating. Okay, we had a little discussion. Excuse me, when the cholesterol goes high, you have to take a drug. Now, if you're curious, a few years ago, there was a lot of medical doctors suggesting we put statin drugs in the condiments because the food is so toxic with the antibiotics and the meat and things that it would raise cholesterol levels. So if you just mix the drug in with the condiments, it'd be okay. No, seriously. I'm telling you, forget 100 years, 10 years from now, hopefully common sense will kick in. But the body is trying to maintain homeostasis. That I also agree with, that the body's going to try and get its level to balance to survive on the planet. Now, the germ theory is interesting. Are germs cause disease? Do they? Now, the current popular virus that's going around that you're hearing in the news and everywhere, they had never done coach postulates. They've never truly identified that this was the one causative factor, okay, and reproduced it and grew it up and, identified it. So let's just look at what the Lancet says about the germ theory. The germ theory has become dogma because it neglects many of the other factors that play a part in deciding whether the host-germ complex leads to infection. Susceptibility, genetic constitution, behavior, socioeconomic determinants. And that makes sense. Because think of it, 10 people walking through a swamp, they all get bit by mosquitoes. Do all of them get sick? No. Okay, because there is an immune system. How does it work? The experts don't know. But we do know things that perturb it, like physical, chemical, emotional stress. But this germ theory just doesn't make sense. Because if this germ theory was true, you'd want to protect all the population with masks, gloves, and be afraid of the virus. And that we know that doesn't work because multiple countries didn't shut down. Multiple states haven't done these inane recommendations. And if you want a really good idea for New York is separate in all the world statistics because they're about 3 times worse than any country possible on the earth. So either New Yorkers are sick or their approach to this is not good. So when we look at biomedical models of illness, British Medical Journal. Now again, think of this because this is what the entire system is based on. The biomedical model of illness, which has dominated healthcare for the past century, cannot fully explain many forms of illness. Number 1, all illness has a single underlying cause. No, it's not COVID. Disease pathology always has one cause. That's it. It's the disease. It's the virus. It has nothing to do with your high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, failed chemotherapy, poor lifestyle, multiple medications, and you eat fast food every day. That has nothing to do with it. it's that pathogen. Removal or attenuation of that disease will result in a return to health. Okay? Evidence exists that all three of these assumptions are wrong. Of course they're wrong, because we're using common sense, not fear. Theobald Smith, germ theory. And think of this. You have the virulence, the toughness of the pathogen. You have the number of pathogens. Now, the PCR test doesn't even tell you how many you got, so it doesn't have any clue at the viral load. And they're not looking at any other factors, your physical, chemical, emotional stress. None of those factors are recognized. And Theobald Smith phenomenon is that the more proteins you inject into your system, because he developed, I think it was the diphtheria vaccine, that there's an autoimmune response to that. So he warned that too many shots would be not good. Virchow, one of the developers of the microscope, okay, and to look at things. If I could live my life over again, I would devote it to proving that germs seek their natural habitat, diseased tissue, rather than being the cause of the disease. Just taking this as an example, are healthy people dying in droves? You ask anyone under 30, okay, they're going to be saying, oh, yes, it's horrible. Why? Because I've asked them. Okay, so I put their risk on the front door. So if you have no comorbid conditions and you are healthy and you are under 30, this is your risk of this particular virus. This is your risk of actually living. So living, where 7,700 people die every day, that's more dangerous. Pasteur and Beauchamp. And again, if we're looking at this, that germs seek their natural habitat, diseased tissue. What did the CDC say about most of the deaths that are occurring now? They're saying that most of the people, 94%, had 2.6 comorbid conditions. I know. The average person that's really healthy should have at least 3 comorbid conditions. No, it'll make sense. Okay, so Beauchamp was saying, don't treat the infection, treat the patient. Look at the stressors, look at what's causing it. And Pasteur is supposedly have recounted on his deathbed that it is the terrain. Brilliant article, and I encourage you to read this one. International Journal of Vaccines and Vaccination, who had their finger on the magic of life, Beauchamp or Pasteur. So it is with Beauchamp. Had the profound voice of his science not been silenced, much of humankind would have been spared of the worst aspects of infectious and vital stresses of the 20th century. Since the case can be made that approved but improper and dangerous treatment of infectious diseases over the last century has in part given rise to the present epidemic wave of degenerative diseases, including cancer, AIDS, or Ebola, we might have been spared these miseries as well. At least we have understood them much more clearly why we have them. Fortunately, Beauchamp's work has been kept alive by a small successive band of truth seekers. Yes, I know, Google is taking care of that. Okay, and Facebook and YouTube, okay, yeah, you don't want those truth seekers putting up a dissenting opinion that says, oh my God, it's the immune system and not the pathogen. There is no medical doctrine as potentially dangerous as the partial truth implemented as the whole truth. Any medical professional, bioscientist, healthcare practitioner, or layperson, for that matter, who wishes to gain insight into the origins and nature of infectious and chronic illness against the backdrop of a marvelous view of the life process must consider Beauchamp. And that is the key. How many lives could be saved right now if instead of waiting for a test, waiting for a virus, you went in and looked at those people that had the comorbid conditions, the high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, pulmonary disorders, and go in there and give them the vitamin C, the nutrients, help their gut, change their body. Okay, that's the purpose of this. I mean, when you look at this, the health of Americans, this is the sickest population of animals on the planet. 1 in 2, 50% will get cancer. Dementia, it's nearly 1 in 1. Obviously, look at CNN. Okay. No, those are just the talking heads. Okay. So autoimmune disorders, heart disease, 1 in 4. If I said that this was a herd of rhino or buffalo, you would say, good God, that's a dead species. Now, this entire 60% of the U.S. population in adults have a chronic illness or disease. 54% of the children have a chronic illness or disease. Yes, this has been brought to you by the National Institute of Health, the Center for Disease Control, the Federal Food and Drug Administration, Health and Human Services, and the AMA. They are the ones responsible for the health of this population. Why? Because they're utilizing the germ theory and not what the heck is really the problem. In 2004, they say top military leaders report 70% of American youth are not fit for service. This is an all-volunteer service. Okay, in 2004, half of the 13 to 18-year-olds was diagnosed with at least one mental, emotional, or behavioral disorder. We're seeing that rise. And what do you think is going to happen? Think of your memory from school. Any memory. Did it involve interacting with people? Yes? Maybe a sporting event, maybe throwing a ball. None of that is going to happen now until we take it back. Now, the World Health Organization says that non-communicable diseases, this is the one that you got to watch out for. Now, according to the last statistics I heard was that 1 million people supposedly have died from this virus. 1 million people in, 9-10 months now. Okay? 36 million every year die of non-communicable diseases. Every year. And these are some of the comorbid conditions that are supposed to be dying from this supposed virus. So 36 million every year. That means next year, how many people are going to die? 36 million. So if we could find solutions for these diseases like cardiovascular disease, cancer, respiratory diseases, and diabetes, would that be of value? Well, since our planet is dying so fast, which one? What's the cause? Is it genetics, bad luck, bad genes, not enough meds? We don't have the right vaccines yet. Let's look at this gal. Now, this gal, if you saw her, she looks 35, maybe. 60-year-old USO performer. Now, when you're talking USO, she had traveled to a bunch of countries, multiple vaccines, and when you're a performer, you get hurt, you still got to play. That's her spine. That is a leaky gut. Now, she presented with low back pain for years and high blood pressure. What we found was a reverse cervical curve, a leaky gut, unstable pelvis, dental toxicities, thoracic rotation, causing heart palpitations. Now, all of this stuff, there's nothing unusual about this. This is what we see all the time. If somebody comes in with low back pain, I'm not going to check for, does that radiate to the knee or beyond the knee? What are the aggravating factors? No, that's stupid. That's what most doctors would do. What you got to do is find out, how is this affecting your body? Obviously, if you know that you have an automatic nervous system, if you've been in pain for 4 years, are you in a rest, digest, and repair mode? Or are you in a stress state? Stress state, absolutely. And if you have that alteration in communication of the brain, that means if the structure is altered, you have altered communication of the brain. Anxiety, stress, and depression, because that's from the frontal lobe. Now, the Harvard Medical School and the New England Medical Journal said that our system of the germ theory of looking at symptoms and treating it with a chemical, because basically that's American healthcare. You go to the doctor with a cold, what are you going to get? Vitamins? Nope, that's censored. No, that's censored as well. No, that's censored as well. Okay, what are you going to get? You're going to get an antibiotic, a steroid, or something. You're going to get your symptoms treated with a chemical. And they say it's so dangerous that if you don't have symptoms, don't go to your annual physical. So dangerous, the system. And when we look at comprehensive physiology, further understanding of the regulatory mechanisms linking sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and the immune system is critical for understanding the relationships between chronic disease development and immune system associated autonomic nervous system function. Let me see, 36 million are dying from non-communicable diseases every year. These diseases are adaptations to stress. The medical system that's currently in place now says that they're from idiopathic origins. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. What's high blood pressure from? Don't know. Okay, So what I explained to these people, I said, look, if I'm standing on your foot, will your blood pressure go up? I don't know. Okay, here, let me stand. No, 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 no. It'll go up, doc. It'll go up. Okay, okay. Okay, so you mean your blood pressure goes up under physical, chemical, or emotional stress, so shouldn't we look for those? But think of this. What I used to do with my students is I'd ask them, now figure we're over a human dissection, and I'd say, what's the connection between the hand and the eye? And, like all students, they shrink back, don't ask me. So I'll pick a guy with light-colored eyes, and I'll squeeze his hand really hard, and you'll see the pupils dilate. And then the doctors, and these guys are they're doing human dissections, so they've had a lot of schooling. All of a sudden, they go, wow. And I'll go, yeah, now what just happened to his liver? Yeah, the liver started to break glycogen and glucose. What happened to his immune system? Yes, it was weakened under that sympathetic stimulus, that pain stimulus. What happened to his eyes? His eyes dilated. What happened to his paravertebrals, the muscles that you don't have conscious control over? They increased in tone. And all of that happened in that instant. Now, what if you had pain for 4 years? Is that going to alter how your body regenerates? Now, chronic illness. What did the World Health Organization say? 36 million are dying from non-communicable diseases. And that is from a defective immune system. It is not from a defective immune system. It is from an adaptation, an adaptive immune system. And what are you adapting to? Physical, chemical, and emotional stress. If you have a doctor that's not addressing this, that's when you fire him. This is another patient. And this, just sweet gal. Honest to goodness, when you start working with people, you end up, just loving them. Okay, this is her body standing up. Now, since she was a little kid, she had challenges. But the top list is the medication she takes daily. The other one is medications as needed. And her diagnoses, I know diagnose means two people not agreeing not to know. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, adrenal fatigue, Beckett's, I don't know what that is, endometriosis, and Hashimoto's. I know 2 or 3 more diagnoses would be fine. 5 or 6 more medications, she'd be fine. No, that's criminal. That's criminal. What do you do? Do you drug symptoms or find the physical, chemical, emotional stress? She's doing a heck of a lot better. She's a sweetheart. Your immune system, you have 2 basic parts to it. You have stuff that's been given to you by your relatives. And I don't mean relatives, mom and dad. I mean eons ago. I mean relatives that have survived the Black Plague, relatives that have survived starvation. Your genetic makeup is designed to thrive on this planet because of that innate immune system. Then you have the adaptive immune system. You got an immune system that you're going to develop based on what stimulus you're going to get. So this means that if you're working in the sun, if you're dealing with certain chemicals, if you have certain, like we just had a patient. This patient, cool, is in the movie industry for years, and decades and decades. And he's shot films in Africa, Asia, the deep dark jungles, okay, Australia. Okay, raise your hand if you wouldn't mind hanging with that guy for a few hours. No kidding. Okay, I know. It's totally bitching. But what are you doing when you're in that environment? Okay, you're probably getting some vaccinations for there. You're probably going to get different pathogens. You're going to have different, because every time you move to a different area, you got to change the gut bacteria. That's the function of the appendix, by the way. So if you get diarrhea, the appendix is there to repopulate the gut. So if you've had your appendix removed, that's where there's a 60% increase risk of colon cancer. But that is the adaptive immune system. So you're going to adapt to these different environments. Okay, and you have the innate immune system. Now, the components of the immune system, you have the skin. Okay, this has bacteria on it, viruses, funguses, everything. It is designed fantastic. It reproduces every 28 days. It's an amazing structure. And in fact, if I eat an apple and a banana, I can turn that into proteins to make skin. Isn't that true? Okay, do me a favor. Tell your kids or grandkids that that's what they're doing, because that is what they're doing. Their body is regenerating themselves utilizing plants. That should give you goosebumps. Gastric acid, intense, powerful. It kills pathogens. But if you're in a stressed state, you produce less stomach acid. What does that do? that allows bacteria, molds, funguses that could be pathogenic, that should have been killed by that gastric secretion, now it starts to grow in the small intestinal. That's happened so much they named it. It's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. Is that from bad bacteria, or is it from low stomach acid? Low stomach acid. What does low stomach acid come from? A low functioning parasympathetic or a fight or flight state. Saliva, tears have antimicrobial, antibacterial. I mean, your tears glands are on the outside of the eyes. It literally protects you. Okay, then you look at intestinal bacteria. I mean, the Aboriginal cultures have more than 30 to 40,000 different types of bacteria in their gut. Modern humans, maybe 10,000. So building that gut flora, and that's 80% of your immune system. Mucus, fantastic. It's deadly to microorganisms. So, it just makes sense. Macrophages. These guys are amazing. The macro means big, phage means eater. So these are the big eating cells. Now, what do they kill? Viruses, funguses, bacteria, pathogens. How are they stimulated? Oh my God, they're stimulated directly with the nervous system. That means your nervous system is connected to the immune system. That means if you want to kill this stuff, you want to strengthen it. You want to strengthen your body. And this goes on dealing effectively with the physical, chemical, and emotional stress. We know antibody production is great, but there's also a congenital anomaly called agammaglobulinemia that these people can't produce antibodies. And they are still able to eliminate viruses at the same speed as somebody who doesn't. So remember, how much do the experts know about the immune system? Very little. Very little. Inflammatory responses. Now, inflammation is how the body heals, but when you break a cell, histamines are released and that creates inflammation. But inflammation is how the body heals. What's the number one drug that's going to be given for joint pain? A non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Now, those drugs destroy joint cartilage, increase risk of cardiovascular disease, damage the kidneys, but it's a chemical therapy system that you're living in. Here's a patient, ductal carcinoma in situ. Now, they came out a few years ago and said it's no longer considered cancer. Sorry about the more than 1 million people that had their breast removed because of that. That's criminal. Now, this gal, hysterectomy. Now, are we doing hysterectomies on cows, horses, deers, buffalo? No, we're exposed to endocrine disruptors, things that are kind of like hormones, but not. This is in glues, pesticides. I mean, so many different toxins in the environment that your body can recognize kind of as a hormone and kind of not. So are we, before all of that travesty went on, did they look at her physical, chemical, and emotional stress? No, you can see physical stress there. If I was to show you that the spinal cord stops at the junction of the rib cage and lumbar, that's right what the worst angle is. That means that she's got nerve supply to the gut that's been shut down. And nobody saw that. Goodness gracious. Your body responds intelligently. This is where the tumors are coming from. You're exposed to these toxins. And the body tries to eliminate through respiration, perspiration, pooping and peeping. Yes, I kissed my mother with that mouth. So when you look at this, that's how your body detoxes. But if you have an overload of poisons, you can't detox. So you're going to wall it off. That makes sense. Okay, so cell-mediated, humoral, I mean, all of this stuff. There's all these different pathways. Some are stimulated by nutrients, but the whole thing is governed by your perception of the environment. You've got natural killer cells, cells that literally kill tumors. They kill pathogens. And how are these stimulated? Through the nervous system. How are they activated? How do they utilize their stuff? You need healthy vitamins. You need sleep. You need to deal with your physical, chemical, and emotional stress. Then you'll have a healthy response. And this right here is hugely important. I got 3 patients up here. One of them I haven't met yet, but I just got his picture, but it was perfect. Thank you. Okay, now, you're going to see bones, and these are all side views of the neck. You're going to see bones separated, but a big old huge ligament on the front, on the far left one, starting to fuse. Now, this is called diffuse idiopathic skeletal hyperostosis. Diffuse means it's all over the friggin' place. Idiopathic means they haven't a clue at what causes it. Hyperostosis, hyper means a lot. Ostosis means like it forming into bone. Now, in the neck, it's also called Foustier's disease. But now you need to have 3 segments involved in order to qualify for that diagnosis. Now, I haven't talked with this guy yet, but I saw his x-ray, and you're going to see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 segments that are not fused on the far right. They're not fused. They're just a little ossification of the anterior longitudinal ligament, very, very simple, not a big deal. I'm looking at that as, oh my God, this is a beginning autoimmune condition. That shouldn't be there. See, the way degeneration is you've got those 2 bones separated, and with the trauma that limits motion, then the disc needs motion to get the nutrients, and it gets compressed, and the body distorts the bone to increase the surface area, like we talk about how to reverse arthritis and where arthritis comes from. This is not an arthritic problem. This is an autoimmune condition that's dangerous. Should we wait till 3 segments get involved, or should we strengthen the immune system? I know, I haven't met him, but I already like him. I love his cousin. She's amazing. So when we get here, not just because she brings food, okay, she's a really nice person. Sarah likes her too. So what do you need for a healthy immune system? One of the things, it's already functioning well. You need to avoid toxins. You know, vaccines, medication, processed foods, all of these things can weaken your immune system and alter your immune system to an inefficient level. Genetically modified, toxic grains, or processed sugar, pasteurized dairy, unhealthy meats, these are all have endocrine disruptors or toxins inside of them. Why is exercise so beneficial to your immune system? Well, because you get stimulation up to the brain. And you're talking angiogenesis, that's blood vessel formation, but plus carbon dioxide goes away. That's an acid. You need to breathe in order to have a healthy immune system. Anybody get that? Okay, just check it. Okay, you need neurotransmitters. It's just this is how your body works. And I know we should close the beaches for active use only. It's just mind-blowing. Exercise helps. Barefoot is fantastic. Why? Because this is going to start to get rid of the bunion formation. Once you restore the nerve supply from the unstable pelvis, this is actually what normal feet look like. The toe goes straight. I have to take my shoe off and show people what normal is. Well, no, that runs in my family. I said, no, buddy, flat feet don't run. Okay. Vitamin D. This means getting outside, sunlight. If you're north of the equator, you need vitamin D supplementation. Produces serotonin, helps nerve growth. Omega-3, sardine, mackerel, anchovies, the single most important nutrient for the brain function. What do we have? We have most of our kids, 54% of a chronic illness or disease. Anxiety, stress, and depression is rampant. This is the real epidemic of chronic illness or disease that's affecting 60% of the adults and 54% of the kids. Healthy fats, coconut oil, olive oil, grass-fed butter. This is a bitchin' book. Okay, phospholipid spectrum disorders. I mean, absolutely amazing, amazing information in here. And it talks about how you need those fats in order for good brain connection. And here's some of the other data on it. 1998, researchers noted significant lower levels of omega-3 in red blood cell membranes of patients with depression. 1999, Archives of General Psychiatry, 64% of those who took fish oil, 10 grams of fish oil per day for 4 months, marked improvement in their symptoms. Why? I know giving an antidepressant that is a side effect of suicide and suicidality and suicidal thoughts that's supposed to be a selective serotonin uptake inhibitor, that is a patent medicine, but they don't actually know how it works, because when you look at the clinical pharmacology on all antidepressants, it says mechanism, or all the SSRIs, mechanism of action is unknown. But we do know they have the side effect of suicide and suicidal thoughts. Or you can try fish oil. And you know what, patients have actually come in and said, well, doc, how much should I take? What's the dosage? And I said, okay, how many cans of sardine could you eat without throwing up? Because it's really, we're talking basic, it's food. Okay, it's food that your brain needs. Sleep. So we're talking food, nutrients, exercise, vital for your immune system, dealing effectively with your physical, chemical, emotional stress. Sleep. How many people go to sleep and wake up refreshed? Very, very few. I've got hours and hours of sleep videos. What kind of things happen when you have a lack of sleep? Degenerative conditions. The non-communicable diseases are in that category. That means because at nighttime your body regenerates. If you can't regenerate, you break down. Drugs that affect sleep, because we are in a culture that you have a symptom, you get a drug. And if you have a real bad symptom, you get a surgery. Beta block, those are the blood pressure drugs, antacids, over-the-counter cold medications, steroids, sedative medications. All of these interrupt sleep. And what does that do? That causes a chronic illness or disease. Welcome to America. There's sleep mastery, and it's so easy to reset your circadian rhythms. It takes 5 days to sleep through the night. It takes 21 days of doing this exercise. But understand that your eyes open every 90 minutes. You complete a rapid eye movement cycle, which lasts 90 minutes. Your eyes open and your ears get more sensitive. So you need a white noise machine set at 528 hertz. You need night shades because your eyes are going to be opening, but they got to be good quality so you can open your eyes, while they're covered. I see an episode of Shameless for some really cool ones. Am I the only one that saw Shameless? Okay, you did too. Okay, good. Yeah, don't say what's on them. Go to bed at 10 to 10:30 and just understand how your body works. There's high disease rates at 9 hours or more sleep or 5 hours or less sleep. So you're going to sleep 6.5 to 7.5 hours is optimal for your species, for our species. Meditation. Is this important? Yeah, you're going to get in the parasympathetic nervous system. Every study shows that. And MIT, Harvard, and Yale, they agree on something. Our data suggests that meditation practice can promote cortical plasticity, that's good, healthy brain function, in areas of cognitive and emotional processing as well as well-being. Amazing. Wait a second. So does this mean health is not absence of symptoms? Health is actually good genetic expression. That means if I catch or earn, because you can't catch something, you've got to earn this. You got to have a weakened immune system because we know at our population, we got over a 4% survival rate. 99.4% survival rate. Of course, the numbers go way, way up if you're, under 60. I think it's 99.997%, and I'm over 60 now, so my risk is higher. But you're supposed to get sweating, cold, diarrhea. These are normal expressions. You don't suppress those symptoms. You find out why they're there. So your normal adaptive response, if you have high blood pressure, could it be from diarrhea? Could it be from stress? It's your body adapting. We just know that if you take one blood pressure medication, your risk of stroke increases because that medication can cause vasoconstriction to get the blood pressure back up to where your body needed in the first place. So what is illness? How do you diagnose this? If somebody has an illness, it's really beyond your adaptation. So coughing, cold, diarrhea, those are not illnesses. Those are adaptations for your body's immune system. Your illness is a toxicity. It's deficiency and a failure to adapt. My gosh. So what kind of things cause that toxicity? We're looking at dental amalgams, medication, toxic food, vaccination, toxic emotions. How would you like to be angry all the time? Okay, what's that going to do to your brain function, impulse control? So we've got to take back. I mean, if Utah can do it, we can do it. Okay, we can do it. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Okay, join the millions against medical mandates. Do you think that you should have the right to decide what goes in your body? I can't believe I'm having this conversation because that is stupid. You should have autonomy of your own body. Do you think that you should be able to decide for your kids if they should get medical procedures? It's just like mind-blowingly. Also join Medical Freedom Pack because we have to take it back. The only way we get our world back is by taking it back. Go to our sites because this is going to be censored more than likely eventually. We are going to do a new format though. I'm going to do about 20 minutes on diseases, and then the stuff that I can't say, 20 minutes on another site. Okay, they're working on it now. I think it's Dr. B VIP. I'm not sure if that's the right one, but they're going to do it because it's so frustrating to not say vitamin or it's so frustrating. Okay, can you see why we put physical, chemical, emotional stress? Okay, you were designed to live here. You are the end result. Everyone here is the fastest sperm, so that's cool. Okay, you guys made it to the egg. Okay, yeah, you started off winners, baby. Okay, but then, I mean, just take care of yourselves. You're designed to live here. This is not an unusual planet for you. You don't need to have any special equipment. You do need clothes to protect you from the sun, but you do need sunlight exposure, okay? You're designed to live here, okay? Next week, we're going to talk about how to reverse stenosis. Ooh, thank you very much.